So many things open now.
So you're going to get them to do your icebreaker and find out about them too?
Actually, since everyone I think knows each other, I don't think anyone knows Afnan. Maybe Afnan, or you can have an introduction for yourself, Afnan. Afnan, you're still mute if you're speaking.
Oh, hi, sorry, am I on mute? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Hi, I think I know most of you here. My name is Afnan. I know Omoro, Neil. I've worked with Chloe a bit, and Gertrude and I have been friends since undergrad. Sorry, I missed, what do I have to say?
Oh, just introduce yourself. I think the Innocent may not know you as well.
Oh, I know Innocent. Hi, Innocent. We haven't spoken before, but we've been connected. Actually, no, we did speak.
Oh, great.
Hi, Afnan.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes.
There we go, sorry. Yeah, so nice to meet all of you. I'm Afnan. I did my bachelor's in health studies and anthropology at University of Waterloo. And I did my master's in public health with a global health specialization at University of Toronto, Dalalana School of Public Health. And I've worked in refugee health in Kitchener, a bit of work with Neil. I was involved with Pegasus conference when it emerged. And then I've been working with WHO for the last 2 years. I just finished up with WHO. And yes, that's a bit about me. Anything else I need to say?
Oh, no, that's it. I can get started. Maybe I can share my screen. Oh, Neil, I'm not sure if you're able, but Melissa did not offer us screen sharing.
You know who the host is? Is there anyone who knows?
Well, I can try
Are
to
you the
do.
host? No,
No, I'm not. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to try to log in under Pegasus Institute. Melissa showed me how to do that, but I'll have to go to a different computer and see what I can do that way.
I think I can do it, Neil, if you're okay with that.
Oh yeah, you've got to log in. Yeah, Chloe has to log in.
Yeah, it might take me a few minutes.
We have, is it Shika?
Yes, Shika.
Yeah, so maybe we continue on with introductions for a little while.
Okay. Hi, Shika. I know we know a little bit about you, but you can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shika. I have known Gertrude since undergrad. I did my undergrad in planning at University of Waterloo and my master's in U of T for landscape architecture. Currently, I'm working as an urban designer and a landscape designer at a firm in Toronto. And that's the gist of me.
And also to add, for our last annual report, it was Shika that designed it for us and kind of did some of the templates that we're using currently. So she's been of great help already to Pegasus, but kind of comes in at ad hoc. Shika, we're just waiting. We realized our admin is on vacation and I don't have host sharing. So Chloe, I think, has some login and she might share with me.
That's fine.
Give me access. Maybe as you're waiting, we can do some of the upcoming activities under Pegasus. And so I believe
do we need to also introduce ourselves to Shika, or?
Yes, please go ahead, Neil. I don't think you've met formally. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm Neil Aria, family doctor. I also was in the same faculty as you as an adjunct in environment and resource studies. Yeah, so we run a refugee health clinic and have led different peace type NGOs and some environmental type things. So it's really nice to meet you, Shika, and to see Afnan again. And Amira, and everybody else.
Nice to see you, Neil, or hear you.
Maybe Neil, since you're more versed, would you like to just introduce the course, the Summer Institute with McGill, as that's the upcoming events?
Sure. So one of our board members, Charles Larson, is the director of the Global Health Office at McGill, and he was looking at ways of Pegasus engaging with new people, and suggested that we offer some courses with this Summer Institute. They've had Summer Institutes in infectious disease for the last 5 years, and we decided to offer this as our first couple of offerings. And we have a third course, which we're not organizing as part of our Summer Institute, and that's supposed to be about decolonizing humanitarian assistance. But the two courses that we're offering, one on peace through health and the other on environment and human health, are both things that I've taught at the University of Waterloo and Peace Through Health at McMaster. And we'll have people from around the world in both courses. So a little bit different than the in-person courses that we've taught, where you try to get people locally within driving distance and might have somebody on video. It used to be Skype. So this time we'll have people from Congo and Rwanda initially, although both based in North America. So Innocent is one of our people in the Peace Through Health course, but otherwise having people from Syria, Afghanistan, and El Salvador, a few other zones of conflict. So the Peace Through Health course should be quite interesting. It is a collection of people that I don't think has been part of any course like this before. Even say one session with Janice Alton from Voice of Women for Peace is going to have 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners. And then the environment and human health course will have a planning prof from the University of Waterloo, Jane Law, who does health, but we'll have, again, people from different parts of the world. First day will be more on more a clinician thing in terms of health effects of toxins from land, water, and air. And then we start to really have more of a Pegasus approach to things, with things around indigenous rights and health, the effect of mining companies in the world on human health, then some things on climate change and One Health, and on advocacy. So it'll be a little bit different than any other environment and human health thing. And for people from the Global South, we actually have scholarships for the Peace Through Health course, but we've tried to make both courses very affordable for students and young professionals here as well as in other places. Is that enough of an intro?
It is. It seems I'm able, so just give me a moment. Thank you, Chloe, for that. And let me just make it a presentation mode. Perfect. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Let it just reload, and I can. Well, it seems we've already gone through a few of the slides, so we can just kind of breeze through them once it loads. Perfect. So obviously the introduction and icebreakers, which we've already done, introduction to Pegasus Institute, emerging leaders, and the second educational session, which is myself, and closing remarks. you guys all know us now, and we've got to know you and the new people. And so just a quick sense, I know all of you guys are aware, but just with Pegasus, our new vision has,
Gertrude?
yes?
Oh yeah, you are recording. Okay, yeah. That's
Yes.
fine.
Cheers. Our new vision, Afnan, you may have remembered something similar, but it's changed to a vision where the world is peaceful interactions and provides for sustainable global health. And I'll just kind of pass through some of these slides as we have already done them all, just to give a sense if there were new members who are coming in. And going into the Emerging Leaders Network, which Chloe and I and Dr. Innocent are kind of the leads for them. So the overview that we are hoping to do with this new program that we're doing is to engage diverse individuals, usually young professionals interested in planetary health challenges and promotion of peace, global health, and sustainability. And Afnan, I know you are kind of in the beginning of this. What has changed is strategic objectives for the ELN. We kind of have 3 prongs, which is meaningful engagement, which is to raise awareness and interest, capacity building and networking. And what we decided for this year, instead of making those formal programs, is to just run an education session throughout the meetings. And so we have kind of, each time somebody joins, they get kind of new skills versus something completely different. So then I will go into my presentation. So my presentation is building a career in global health, from internships to working with the World Health Organization. So a little bit about myself. I'm a public health professional, a project manager, travel enthusiast, yoga student, and a car baby. And if you know me, you know me very well. So an overview for jobs, and I just wanted to start off with something quite general and we drill down is, I think what we can all kind of agree on is that in all our spheres of learning and working, there's career competencies that we all have to have, but we all know that having a degree is not enough. There's a need to stand out away from the crowd. And so I will touch on these points and go through them in depth. So having career competencies is a requirement here in Canada. And for those in public health, we have 7 categories of competency. We have 36 competencies that are organized into 7 categories. And so for the public health sciences, just a quick preview what they are, which are key knowledge and critical thinking skills related to the public health sciences, including behavioral and social sciences and biostatistics. In regards to assessment and analysis, we describe the core competencies needed to collect, assess, and analyze and apply information. Under policy and program planning, we also have the competencies needed to effectively choose options to plan, implement, and evaluate policies and programs in public health. Partnerships, collaboration, and advocacy, which has come more to the forefront with COVID-19. We capture the competencies required to influence and work with others to improve the health and well-being of the public through pursuit of a common goal. And some of the skills needed are team building, negotiation, conflict management, and group facilitations to build partnerships. Diversity and inclusiveness, which too has also been a huge staple point for the past 2 years. It identifies the social cultural competencies required to effectively interact with diverse individuals, groups, and communities, and embody the attitudes and practices that result in inclusive behavior practices, programs, and policies. Further, we have communication. We have communication, which involves the interchange of ideas, opinions, and information. And last but not least, we have leadership, and this one focuses on the competency of building capacity, improving performance, and enhancing the quality of the work environment. And so these are the core skills that if you go to a public health school in Canada, you will end up with. But we know that having a degree is not enough. And so I reflected on what else is needed and kind of went through a little bit of those. So from my perspective, I think what is needed is to have an online presence. Afnan may doubt this on me because she's refused to have a LinkedIn profile, even though I say it's important. Strong professional networks and relevant intercultural exchange. And please note that in these links, and I know we'll send them out to everyone, these articles as to why these are important. And so I believe this article is talking about the 7 benefits, I believe, for having a LinkedIn profile. So some people may benefit from looking at those. And so for me, I just want to touch base on relevant intercultural exchange. I think that's quite important in the field of public health and global health, which we're all in. And I'll kind of walk through a way that I think is the best way to do the exchanges and what you can get from it as we go along. And so for me, clicks really quickly. So intercultural exchanges, obviously this is in a Canadian context, and I've kind of divided them through local and international. I'm not sure if you all are aware of the program Katimavik. So it was founded in 1977, and it's a Canadian national youth empowerment and youth development charitable organization, and it promotes active volunteerism and supports communities. Though they are not necessarily an Indigenous communities, a lot of the work that they do supports the truth and reconciliation process. And it's open to youth in Canada, and youth goes up to the age of 30. And currently they have two national programs that are being opened, that have opened up back with COVID. If you're not aware, there's a website called Charity Village. And since 1995, Charity Village has been the HR partner for recruitment in Canadian nonprofit sector. It currently serves over 170,000 charitable and nonprofit organizations across Canada. And some of the offerings, they offer paid job postings, they have free volunteer and event listings. And so for me, in terms of volunteering in your community and seeing what you can offer, I would advise this as well. And LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn can go into both in terms of getting experience in Canada and internationally, as it's the world's largest network of 810 million members with more than 200 countries and territories worldwide. Linked in this link right here is the Rock Your LinkedIn Profile course offered internally by LinkedIn if you want to learn how to improve and maximize some of the aspects of the LinkedIn profiles that they do have. The link is here as well. And on the
sorry,
yes,
isn't Katimavik, didn't they finish it? The government finished Katimavik.
No, they've reopened again after COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now there's two programs open. They may be at a smaller scale than they usually do, but it seems like it's reopened back after COVID. Yeah. So Global Affairs Canada, this is the program that I went with, and Global Affairs has different modalities, which is the International Youth Internship Program, which is IEP, and it's part of the Government of Canada's Youth Employment and Skills Strategy. And so what they do is they're funding non-governmental organizations across Canada to offer positions for early career development. And so I can talk a little bit more about that. But what I also use, and it's kind of, I found it through my working with OCIC, there's something called a project browser. I'm scared to open it if it's gonna completely mess up our setup, but we can have a look and maybe I can walk you really quickly through it. Oh, perfect. Can you still see my page? Perfect. And so it has this thing called the project browser. And I usually go, I think it's this page right here. And so basically this gives you an understanding of the projects that are being funded in Canada and kind of where the money is going. And so usually, obviously, instead of going through LinkedIn and going through all these organizations that are promoting, I always just kind of do a search. And my filters are generally just by year. And so if we do, if we go back, search for projects. You can do it by, let's say, if you're interested in monitoring maternal newborn child health, but usually I do it by filter and I just filter it by date. So if you do 2022, you can see all the programs that are funded this year, meaning that they're applying, they have job postings and see, so maybe let's do start date. So I've just kind of reshifted it and the start date, which is starting this year. And so if you go through here, you can see the organizations and what they're funded on. And usually if you go on those websites, that's what you can find kind of postings. That's kind of my cheat sheet for applying for jobs. And so I kind of opened a little bit of them and some of them do still have postings. And so that's kind of a cheat sheet way of that I kind of find what's there in global health in Canada to have an international presence. But moving forward, for myself, my first internship, as I said, was with IEP. And kind of this is the web page when you log back in. it seems, at least for this year, that they have reduced the funding for organizations and more so offering kind of think tanks in order to do kind of policy work and be based in Canada. But I assume over time that these positions will be open. They usually had a whole list of so many countries, so many organizations. I did mine with World Vision Canada. And so I did a project called Machinga Starting Strong, which aimed to make measurable contributions towards improving maternal, neonatal, child health and nutrition to under fives in the traditional authorities of Chamba, Mposa, and Chicheo in 2017. And at that time, it was complementing World Vision Malawi's maternal newborn child health technical program under the nutrition technical approach. And as an intern, my role was to promote the monitoring and evaluation of the project outcomes and interventions in order to identify gaps to be addressed before the project phased out in 2017. And so this is just kind of, we'll create something similar to this if we have the time, and we'll go through it. And I just wanted to point out some of the things that I learned that are quite used across different organizations. For example, there's a care group model, and the care group model is usually a group of 10, 15 volunteers selected by community members to be community-based health educator. And so each volunteer is responsible for imparting knowledge that he or she has received through the health promoter. And so in each region, they choose either a mother lead or a lead father. And this person goes to 8 to 10 households for that week or for that month, whatever the cycle is, and goes door to door and promotes whatever the health messaging is for that time. And it kind of, the main benefit of this is kind of a multiplier effect. And the objective of the care group model is to ensure that each project beneficiary, which are the people who are part of the program or who are receiving services from the program, receive frequent and timely health messages in order to promote desired behavior change, thus improving the health status of children or mothers in the impact area. So just to give you a sense of some of the transferable skills and the concepts and theories that kind of run through a lot of the similar organizations. And for me, this is me right here, and these are kind of the lead mothers. And so this is the health promoter. And so these are kind of the booklets given in Chichewa, which is the national language, and they receive the knowledge. And then each of these individual people had a catchment area of 8 to 10 of their neighbors, and then they would go and spread that message to them. Another one that I thought I really, really loved was, I just pulled out the things that I really liked, the community complementary feeding and learning sessions. And these sessions were for mothers whose babies were experiencing mild to moderate malnutrition. And it was more so preventative. And so what they did is, in the same area, they would find a mother who lives in the same area, but the child is not malnourished. And then we'll get that mother to come in and do kind of cooking sessions and training sessions to the mothers in the area in order to inform them, if she has the same resources, how is it her child is not malnourished. And this was used to promote locally produced nutrient-dense crops. It promoted dietary diversification, because you would find, for example, that one mother, instead of just growing white corn, was growing the multicolored corn, which has more nutrients. And so even though they're making the same kind of meal, her version of it was more nutrient dense. And so we were finding what it is that they were doing different, that their children were benefiting from. And it was also supporting with the proper food processing, preparation, and preservation. And it was improving feeding and caring practices. So as you can see here, these are just women from the community. And I believe this was a woman who was kind of showing, I live in your community, but this is what I'm doing. And then we would all cook together, and the mothers would have to bring their children, and we all eat together. And so this session was done. It was a 12-day session. And so after that, you would weigh the children. And if the children had come back to normal weight, then the program will kind of end. And so in that sense, it was promoting the synergies of agriculture and other livelihood programs in the community, which I really, really loved. You can look more into it. There's various organizations that do it, UNICEF and WFP. And last but not least, there was a village saving loans. I know in a lot of our communities, we have something similar in which the women get together, and every month they produce a certain amount of money, and then that full money is given to one particular woman to do something with it. And there's a session, if you have 12 women, you have 12 women for 1 year. And so in 1 month, one woman would receive a huge chunk of money. And this was basically used to provide simple saving and loan facilities to communities that don't have access to the formal financial services. And so this woman, when we came to this community that had been running this village saving loan program, with her money that she had received, she had gone ahead and actually built a home with cement and a proper roof, and that was quite hard to do if you're just a lowly farmer or just a caretaker at home. And so being part of this had allowed her to, build this home and in other business ventures. Some people do it for business ventures. And so these are just some of the experiences that I found in the field. And it was really, really humbling to have this experience quite early on. I believe I was 24. And so these are just some of the experiences that you can have if you do intercultural exchanges with notable and proven methods, which is going through the government and actually going through vetted organizations. And so at the end, some of the tasks that I completed was community mapping. I did the project budgeting for the year, identification and documentation of care groups, where they were, who was there, and who was being impacted, monitoring of project activities, evaluating the project impact. So did the health of the children and the mothers improve, strengthening local partnerships with the chiefs, the ministries of health, and the agricultural kind of centers, and report writing. So quite a lot of tasks for 1 year worth of work, but it was well worth it. So field, though, this is just me in the field, and this was my team in Machinga. So this is me and the rest of my team and Mr. Henry Macheba. So love the team. So how to stand out from the crowd, and for me, this gentleman was quite actually influential in me going into project management. I was there, and every time we had meetings in the office once a week, just because I always keep track of what everything is happening, he just told me, instead of keeping track like this, why don't you just become a project manager? And I wasn't aware what that is, and he said, I think you'll make a really good project manager. So when I came back, I looked into it, and I started my journey with PMI. And so how to stand from the crowd, in these two sources, I've also, similar to other slides, linked in kind of reviews as to why project management is necessary for the 20th century. And so in looking at this, you can look at the importance of project management in the workplace. This is by Indeed. And so project management thus far has been a more business-minded way of conducting business. And slowly but surely, a lot of organizations, non-governmental organizations in Canada, are promoting it as a requirement for upper management in terms of managing resources and imparting impact and showing impact of the project. And then I thought this was very interesting. Every couple of years, the World Economic Forum does a report on the future of work, and they did a report on the future of work for 2020. And they have predicted that by 2025, more than 50% of the world's population will need reskilling. And reskilling is a completely new set of skills and ideas moving forward. And you can kind of click here and have a look at the report. But if you look at the top skills of 2025, which have been outlined here, a lot of these skills are kind of promoted by project management. The way PMI runs the courses, even though you get the project management designation, you have to maintain your accreditation. And with that, you have to keep up with the certain trends. And so you have to learn software that are used in engineering. You have to use kind of the modalities that are used in technology spheres and in business spheres. And so though I use at this point quite minimal of the resources that I do have in hand, these are the skills that we are also getting imparted from that. And so I'm just putting more so of a case basis as to why I think, at least for development, project management is going to be a skill that can link some of these trends that have already been suggested by the World Economic Forum. And so you have active learning, complex problem solving, critical thinking, analysis, creativity, and all that. So you can have a look at that at your leisure. And so moving forward, I just want to give just a general summary of project management and just give kind of the bare basics so people can understand what they are. And so the definition from the PMBOK guide, which is the gold standard of project management, is that a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And generally, because it has a start and the beginning, they have kind of a project cycle, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard. And there is initiation, which is defining and authorizing new projects, planning, which is kind of creating the scheme of work, executing, which is majority of the work that project managers do, is managing and coordinating people and resources. Along that line is monitoring and control, and closing. So these are just the general processes, but there's obviously tasks underneath it. And the percentages here are the percentages that is recommended the project managers will spend the most time in. And the planning phase, the reason monitoring and control is quite low is because at the planning phase, you should also be putting in kind of your indicators for monitoring and control. And this 5% is just checking up on it and recalibrating the resources as you go along, because most of your planning for monitoring and control has happened in the planning stage. And so just to open up the conversation, I wanted to see if anybody has an idea of what the difference is between a project, program, and a portfolio. And I'll pause it to anyone who wants to give it a try. Maria, would you like to give it a try?
Sure. Portfolio is more like, it's like, it could be like multiple projects or multiple programs. Like it could be like, well, depending on what organization you're in, but it could be the range of, I guess, programs or projects you're responsible for.
Okay, which is true, but then what's the difference between a project and a program?
It could be like a specific focus area within a program.
Okay,
or,
yes, yeah, that's very true actually, because a project is a focused area and a program is finding similar projects that you can leverage different resources and put under one umbrella. And a portfolio would be whatever the business case for the unit, the different programs under that kind of come down and make a portfolio. So you're correct. Maybe she's gonna hate it. What's the difference between a project and operations?
Oh, I was thinking I wanted to go back to the first question.
Oh,
would
go ahead. Okay.
Would time or length of time be a factor? Because you can have a project within a program, which is all part of a portfolio.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So if that's certain companies decide to do it by by time and scope. Correct. Correct. Would you like to take a crack between a project and operations, maybe?
A project and operation. Operation, I think one is more problem oriented than the other, in my opinion and experience. Like an operation has more of a long-term goal than a project.
That's partially true. That's partially true, because you remember a project, the difference is it's a temporary endeavor, right? And so
it's short term, yeah.
It's short term. So I think operations, if you look at an organization, is like what they do as a lot of
strategic
NGOs.
plan.
Exactly.
It would be part of the strategic plan, whereas a project is not. It's kind of like a bullet in the broader operation.
Correct. And so in most NGOs, the operations will generally be the HR kind of department, because they stay constant regardless of what funding you get. And then if you get additional funding to do a project, then you bring in kind of consultants for that year, if it's 5 years. And then, but operations is kind of like what manages, like what's the bare minimum of an organization.
I'm thinking of the WHO in this capacity.
Yes, yes.
And I'm sure you can speak to this too, is there's project-based work, and then there's operations, which is the HR and the bigger mission for the 4 years based on the election.
Perfect, yeah. Yes, and the core functioning of supporting member states, and then you have that, and then when they have additional funding, then they have projects, which is what I am in. So my project, Resolve to Save Lives, a cardiovascular project, but it's time sensitive, and we finished the last the phase of it is ending in June, and we've been given extra funding, and so we're moving forward. But for example, if we weren't, almost everybody in the team would have to get a new job or kind of be absorbed into WHO because our funding is attached to the project versus being core staff at HQ. So I think you started mentioning this, Afnan, and somebody can add on. How do you know if a project is successful? Kind of what are the metrics, the general metrics for a project? There's usually 3, and they're very standard and kind of run through all projects in whatever spheres of work. Maybe Chloe? What would you think? Just
You said there's three
there's
metrics,
yes,
right?
and Afnan already said time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a project passes the time allotment, then you can consider that kind of a fail because it didn't fulfill the requirements. She said one more, but I don't want to give them all up.
Oh, wish you could.
I don't even remember what I said.
It starts with an S, I will say.
Oh, okay.
Starts with an S.
Yes.
Like for the metrics of project, to know if a project is successful, I want to say, like, you know, in terms of evaluation, like using indicators, but I don't know if that's like the right direction that you.
It's even more general
metrics.
than that. She said scope, right?
Okay,
Oh,
I see.
To be honest, I actually, even in my thing, forgot the last metric. It's in the next slide, but okay, we can go to the next slide. So how do you know if your projects have failed? If obviously one of those metrics, I believe it's quality. Let's all find out together. I've just lost my train of thought. Let's see. And so, yes, as we've kind of discussed, kind of a project, a program, a portfolio. So cost, yes. So the 3 constraints of every kind of project and kind of the metrics of success in the general sense is time. Was a project completed upon schedule, or are you meeting the deliverables at the scheduled time, kind of the scope work that is done, and cost and budget. And it's quite interesting to note that one of the at least what I've noticed, one of the major issues in kind of development and kind of work that you do is obviously when you do monitoring, you're supposed to review kind of the data and then make kind of concessions as you go along. But what tends to happen is something called kind of a scope creep. And so to order to mitigate whatever they found, they add more tasks. And when you add more tasks, then you kind of shift all the metrics along. And so I always find it so interesting when I'm in meetings, like strategic development meetings for the next year, and people add more work. And in my mind, I'm like, if you add more work, we will not finish in time because we don't have enough resources. But it's a very common practice. And so, and satisfaction of the key stakeholders are the ones obviously who determine the scope and kind of give a go ahead on whether the scope was fulfilled. And in most of our cases, is the funders, and secondary to that, which should be technically primary, is the stakeholders that we support on ground or the people that we're offering the services to. So just kind of a brief understanding of project management concepts. I am more than happy to go more in depth and do one just of various aspects of it, writing a project charter and how that is similar or not similar to writing like a narrative review for development work, as that is my area of expertise, but I'll leave it to yours now. And so just a general sense of the characteristics and skills, competency needed to be an effective project manager. These are just very generally what have been outlined. Enthusiasm for the project. You have to be supportive of the project, ability to manage change effectively, a tolerant attitude towards ambiguity. And so, funding is not coming next year or whatever the case may be, you have to be the one to kind of steer the ship. I'll leave that word. Team building and negotiating skills, a customer first orientation, and for the sense of development, that would be the beneficiaries first orientation. Everything should be done on, is this beneficial for the beneficiaries? How does this help the people on the ground? Adherence to the priorities of business. With a lot of development, this is adherence to kind of the global strategic goals. And for development right now, those are kind of the SDGs, a lot of the things kind of man towards that. Sorry, let me just, and knowledge of industry and technology. And so for us, knowledge of your knowledge area and technology, kind of any of the resources that you're using or the workflow stations that you're using in your organization. And so I'm not sure if we have a little bit of time, but I just wanted, and maybe I can showcase, and if we do want to do it a bigger time, then we can. I wanted to walk us through doing the development of a logic model or theory of change. As I've found out, and it is a little bit of an art and a science. It seems quite basic when you see it, but if you don't nail the logic model, the theory of change down in the beginning, you cause a lot of ambiguity throughout the project cycle because you're not really clear on where you're heading and where you're going. And so just a sense, for example, this is the logic model we were using at World Vision Canada. As you can see, it's computer generated and there's a lot of moving parts and it has all these metrics at the bottom. But at the end of it, it has quite basic understanding of if-then statements and how to develop them. And I think if you at least have an understanding of what that is, regardless of what organization you are in or however complex the logic model is, you'll be light years ahead in understanding where the project is going or where the strategic goals are going if you understand how a logic model is developed. And so the generic logic model is of something of this sense. So there's a process. So these are kind of what you're putting into the machine. And so you have inputs, and then you have the activities and outputs. And inputs are kind of all the resources that you put in. Activities are the day-to-day tasks. So if you're training healthcare workers or training, it's usually a lot of training stuff, training healthcare workers, making sure all these people have received kind of their computers on the ground. What is the particular task? And each of the tasks should have an allotted lead. And so you can come back and say, was this task done? Output is kind of the immediate results. And then the outcome, which is what your monitoring and evaluation framework will be based on. You have the short-term outcomes, intermediate and long-term. Long-term outcomes is generally, if you think in a project cycle, would be almost 10 to 15 years after the project. And so the long-term outcomes usually are quite grandiose and also reflect an SDG goal or something quite ambitious or whatever the company has put down or the government, let's say, has put down for their future of, let's say, NCDs or cardiovascular health. And so similar to all the slides, I have kind of, I've gone through and found resources that you can click in. And this organization, Tools for Dev, I believe it's a UK organization, if I'm not mistaken. They just have some of the basics, processes and tools that are used in almost all organizations and how to do them. And so they've rearranged theirs similar to this. And as I mentioned, it's like if-then statement. So if I do this activity, then what will happen? And then, so it's better to build from the bottom up as you come up, but there's resources for that to have a look at it. So this one should be kind of bottom up and this one should be top down, kind of coming down. However, you dice it is the way it goes. And so this is kind of me going through and getting something a little bit more specific. As I was stating here, the inputs, resources, what resources are needed to support the project or the program. And then we have activities, which are actions. What will the professional staff or providers do in terms of activities to achieve these goals? Output is tangible, what has been done. So how many or what are some of the sort of observable, tangible results that have been achieved? Short term, what is the direct result of the activity? And so, for example, 10 healthcare workers were trained on blood pressure monitoring. So that's short term, it happened just immediately. And then kind of what will follow up after that. So this is usually change in behavior, policy, or practice. So for example, something like that would be trained healthcare workers have implemented this new model of blood pressure monitoring. And then long-term would be at the health facility level, if you say you want an 80% increase of people who come in with diabetes to be checked with their high blood pressure, and then what will that result in? So that's just how the model is built. And just a clear sense of how it's developed is usually a problem statement in a lot of our organization is kind of like the country profile or the regional profile, what is the situation you're seeking to address with your program, the target population, very clear on who the beneficiaries are. And there's usually immediate beneficiaries, which would, for example, be the mothers that go through whatever program you have. And then secondary and tertiary would be their children or their household, for example, health. So there can be different levels to the population. Program theory, this is usually based on the education background. And so for social development or public health, we usually use various behavioral change theories. And so whatever that one that you use, that's kind of the theory that has to be the basis of your logic model. It's just not made up ad hoc. It has to be based on some sort of standard or some set of progress of how to change behavior change, if that's your intervention. And then assumptions and external factors. And so assumptions would be similar to that. You assume you will have the funding to do that. You assume that the political buy-in that you have will remain in power, or you will assume that even though the political things have changed, that the funding for NCDs will remain the same. So kind of external things that don't necessarily have to do with your practical, but could have a huge, huge impact on your project. And with those, obviously, depending on how complex your problem is, you could have risk mitigations. And so you can have various risk mitigations of, in terms of the funding, you can have risk mitigations in terms of different people in power, maybe putting it as a policy or putting it in the strategic goal for the next 5 or 10 years. And so that's kind of the aspects that we use. Though we are end of time, I did have an opportunity for us to kind of develop one depending on the ideas that you have, if you thought it was worthwhile. And so I can leave the link here. It's linked here, and I have kind of 2 different methods. There's this method if this is easier to understand, but there's also kind of this method. And one thing that wasn't put into the example that I've gone to are indicators. And so though you have the outcomes, you have to have tangible indicators that have proven that that particular outcome or output has been achieved. And so this one is a little bit more second level of thinking of how to organize a logic framework and a theory of change. And the indicators can be, usually have to be verifiable. And so if it's at the, in top level is usually some sort of metrics in the DHIS system of countries to show that the improvement has done. But at the clinical level, it could be kind of the clinical papers of patients served. It could be various things. It could be every 4 or 5 years, a lot of countries do, they do kind of a survey of all health indicators. And so you can use that as a metric at a mid-level or end of project. There's various ways, but whichever the indicator is has to be verifiable at the later stage. And so it seems we're in time, but that's kind of the process of going through one of the critical key documents in any project, in any development. Thank you to Neil. He has already kind of given us a summary of what Pegasus is going through, but just for me as a closing remark, I know I didn't speak too much about necessarily my role at WHO, and I think that was done on purpose to show that it's not necessarily the role and the title that you have, it's the skills that you have to get there, because skills are interchangeable and you can go to any organization. I will say the change of tide in WHO and a lot of positions that I've seen is that they're more leaning towards the skills that you can bring. For example, in my role, my original role was in assistive technology and rehabilitation. And of course, I have no background in either of those, but I had background in transferable skills. And that's why I ended up getting kind of the role. And so far being there, I've already been rolled into 3 different roles just on the basis of transferable skills that I do have. And for our generation, the skills that are quite critical, which are very, not necessarily hard, but it just takes a different understanding, is understanding technology and how to manage technology. Even setting up a meeting such as this, you would think it's easy, but it's not for, people who are not used to the setup of Zoom and stuff. Very clear writing skills, very clear communication skills, but have something that makes you stand apart. For me, my understanding of project management and being able to create an Excel sheet, a budget document being asked, Gertrude, what's the status of the project, and me sitting down and creating my own Excel sheet showing the utilization rate of resources, kind of where we are with program implementation, gives me an edge over other people. And I will implore you to find whatever skill it is that you're good at. And you can review the future report that I have stated and maximize on that. And so it sets you apart. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was really good, Gertrude.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I know you really wanted to go through this, but we can go through this like an in-depth one in detail. I'm more than happy to. And does anybody have any questions for me in terms of the presentation or Pegasus and what we're hoping to be doing?
Gertrude, I just want to say that I really appreciated your presentation, just the different explanations of project versus program versus portfolio, et cetera, and just presenting on the different skills that we might need or seek and et cetera. I really appreciate it, especially I'm currently kind of in the midst of looking what to do next in my career and kind of how to develop that, what a PMP might mean, et cetera, that kind of stuff, and where to go, what pathway to take. So I might contact you to connect with you and pick at your brain a little bit, as I would like to kind of jump in that career in global health, transition out of what I'm currently doing. Unfortunately, I do have to step out. I'm late for another appointment at 6, so I apologize. I'm going to have to step out, but I really did appreciate your presentation, so thank you.
That's no problem. Before you step out, I just want to end it, because if you step out, the whole thing closes as you're the host.
Oh my God, yeah, sorry. No, very good point. Very good point. I'm going to make you a host.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you all. There will be a recording that will be sent out. I'm sure either you or Melissa would receive, and I will send out once received, probably end of the week, so that you have access to this. And I can also link in the presentation with the resources that are linked as well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Afnan. Thank you, Humira. I know it's quite late for you. Thank you for joining, actually. Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Bye. Bye, everyone. Hello, Innocent. It's just how has everything been for you, Innocent, now that you're back in? You seem like you're busy and you should be retired.
That's true. I have been very busy, actually.
What are you doing now?
I was involved in a global health course with the University of Ottawa with
awesome.
Jen. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the course ended today.
Yes.
But it has been like a 3-month course, you know.
Yes, a lot of people messaged me saying that they have papers and things due. It was just poor timing, because we are not in the education sphere anymore to know the timing of things.
Yeah, so now I want to take some rest and relax a bit and start really retiring.
now that you're done. So I'm assuming you have papers and everything to mark and things.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm also writing articles, and it's interesting, I might say. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll connect, because I think we're still recording on the original recording.
Oh, yes.
But that's no problem. Maybe, is it possible? I know Easter is coming up. We can touch base maybe next week, just to touch base on where you are and where you're going, and where I could possibly pivot to as well.
No problem. Just send a link, and then we just
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
How is your dad? Sorry, I didn't ask him.
He's much better. It was just a huge scare, but we'll connect next week.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.